Let's talk about hiring. It's one of the most important things any company does, but so often it feels like a gamble that can lead to some really expensive mistakes. Today, we're going to break down a framework that helps you move away from that guesswork and instead focuses on objective proof.
Okay, so let's start with a problem I'm sure we've all seen or maybe even lived through, the false positive hire. This is that person who just crushes the interview. They're confident, they say all the right things, the resume looks amazing, but then they start the job and, well, the reality just doesn't quite match up with the promise.
So what gives? Why does this happen over and over again, even to really experienced hiring managers? It's super frustrating. But here's the thing. The issue probably isn't your interview skills. The problem is usually baked right into the system itself. Now, before we get to the solution, let's just get really clear about the stakes here. The cost of a bad hire goes way, way beyond just a wasted salary. You know, the biggest dream from a false positive hire is the ripple effect across your entire team. Your best people, your top performers, they get pulled in to fix things, to redo work, to basically clean up the mess. And all of a sudden, one person's performance gap becomes a productivity problem for everyone.
All right, so let's dig into the fundamental flaw in the traditional way of doing things. Why do our interviews, the very thing we work so hard to perfect, so often lead us in the wrong direction?
Here it is. This is the big blind spot. Most of the advice you hear is, ask better questions. But that kind of misses the whole point. A typical interview process is basically set up to reward one skill above all others, being good at interviews. It rewards polish and preparation and speaking confidently, and so that's exactly what you end up hiring for.
And this really highlights that disconnect, doesn't it? We judge candidates on how fluent they are in an interview, but what we actually need is someone who's capable on the job. We get impressed by a polished presentation, when what really matters is someone who can consistently deliver value. They're just not the same thing.
It all boils down to this. An interview is a performance. And, any performance can be rehearsed. A candidate can memorize the perfect answers and act confident for an hour, but that gives you zero guarantee that they can actually do the work.
Okay, so this brings us to the turning point. If the traditional interview is so flawed, what's the alternative? Well, the shift in thinking is actually pretty simple, but it is incredibly powerful. The whole model really hinges on this one idea. You have to stop asking candidates to tell you how they'd solve a problem and start asking them to show you. This is what moves the entire evaluation out of the abstract world of answers and into the concrete world of action. Now, an effective work sample is not a test. It's not a pop quiz. You should think of it as a preview of the job itself. So, instead of asking a customer success manager theoretical questions, you give them a messy, real-world renewal scenario and ask them to draft the email they'd sent. That gives you actual evidence. Okay, great in theory, right? But how do you actually put this into practice systematically? It's not just about doing a one-off work sample. It's about building what we're going to call a proof plan, and it starts from day one. So your proof plan has three main parts. First, you have to define the exact output you need to see in the first 30 days. Second, you define the standard for that output. What does good look like? And third, you decide ahead of time what the mismatch point is. This isn't about being harsh, it's just about being honest and clear from the beginning.
Let's make this really concrete. A vague plan for a new recruiter might be something like, learn the system. A proof plan, on the other hand, is source 40 qualified candidates and get a 20% reply rate. See the difference? One is just a task. The other is verifiable proof of their ability.
And hey, let's be super clear about this. The goal isn't to see perfection on day one. It's all about getting an early signal. Can this person take directions, understand expectations, and turn that into something the team can actually use? That is the proof you are looking for. You know, when you make this shift, when you move your focus from just performance to actual proof, it doesn't just change one little step. It really transforms the entire hiring system into something that's way more effective and, frankly, just more truthful.
Think about it. Once you have a work sample in your hands, the interview becomes a totally different conversation. You don't need to ask those broad, abstract questions anymore. Instead, you can have a really sharp, focused discussion about the work sample. You're talking about real decisions they made, not just rehearsed stories.
This quote, this really gets to the absolute heart of the philosophy. You need to stop trying to build a process that finds great interviewees. You need to start building a system that finds people who will create real value for your company after all the interviews are done. So you can really think of this whole thing as a chain of evidence. It starts with a crystal clear role definition,
That informs the work sample. The sample gets discussed in a calibrated interview, and then success is confirmed with that 30-day proof plan. And the whole thing is held together by a commitment to correcting course early if you need to. Each link just makes the next one stronger.
And when that chain is strong, all those frustrating false positives, they stop feeling like some mysterious random bit of bad luck. They actually become predictable. You can see the weak links in your process, and once you can see them, you can finally fix them.
So I'll leave you with a question to take back to your own team. When you really look at your hiring process, is it built to reward a great performance, or is it built to gather actual proof?